Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. If you've ever dealt with an avoidant person, you know what it feels like to be left hanging. You out here giving, loving, pouring your soul into somebody, and they pull away like love is a threat. You try to talk, they shut down. You try to fix it, they run. And you're left feeling like maybe you did too much. Avoidance don't show emotions easily, but that don't mean they don't feel them. Just cause someone don't cry in front of you, don't beg you to stay, don't call you every minute asking what's wrong, that don't mean it ain't hurting inside. You got to understand, avoidant folks have learned to survive by running from closeness. Somewhere in their life, early on, love probably didn't feel safe. Maybe it came with strings. Maybe it came with pain. Maybe it walked away right when they needed it most. So they built a wall, not a fence they could open, a wall, high and thick. And every time somebody tried to climb it, they pulled away, stepped back, or disappeared altogether. Now when you come in their life, and I mean you, the kind one, the loving one, the person who genuinely cared, you showed them something different. Real affection, patience, support. And at first, they were drawn to it, attracted to that warmth like a cold man to fire. But the moment they got too close, fear kicked in. They might have told you they needed space, or maybe they just started acting cold, distant, like you weren't enough anymore. And let me tell you something, that right there ain't your fault. That's their fear speaking louder than their heart. See, when someone's avoidant, they love you in silence. They care in hiding. They feel deeply, but they don't know how to express it. But here's the twist. When you keep showing up, keep loving them, keep trying to fix it, they don't feel the need to change. They think, she's still here, he's still showing up, I must not have messed up too bad. You become the one making all the emotional deposits while they're withdrawing with no explanation. You start to question your worth, thinking maybe if you just did more, said it better, explained it clearer, they'd come around. But that's not how avoidants learn. That's not how they realize what they did wrong. You want to know what hits an avoidant deep? Not your tears, not your words, not your arguments. What hits them is when you stop. When you stop texting, stop calling, stop chasing, stop explaining. That silence, that lack of energy, that peace you start creating in your own world, that's what wakes them up. Because they were used to you being there. They got comfortable knowing you'd always check in, always forgive, always stay, no matter how many times they hurt you. But when the pattern breaks, that's when their emotions hit them hard. They ain't gonna run to you with a grand apology at first. Nah, they'll sit with it, quiet, uncomfortable. And if you truly step back, not to manipulate, but to heal and protect your peace, they'll begin to feel something they've been avoiding their whole life. Accountability. That little voice in their head starts asking, did I mess this up? Did I push away something good? Was I the problem? And for someone who avoids feelings, that kind of self-confrontation is heavy. So while they may look calm on the outside, inside they're spiraling, replaying old conversations, rethinking the way they handled you, regretting the way they brushed off your love. And in time, if they're emotionally mature enough, they'll realize they hurt someone who only tried to love them. That's when the apology comes. But you don't get there by breaking yourself to get through to them. You get there by honoring your value enough to stop forcing what should have been mutual. Avoidants feel deeply, but they express it late. And often they don't express it until you're gone, until you've chosen your self-respect over their silence. That's the moment when your absence becomes louder than your presence ever did. And suddenly, the person who never said much, who always seemed emotionally unavailable, is sitting there hurt, confused, and full of regret. Not because you yelled, not because you pleaded, but because you finally stopped showing up. And that silence hit them right in the soul. The moment you stop chasing, they start reflecting. That's real talk. See, some of y'all don't even realize how powerful your absence is. You think the only way to make someone realize your worth is by loving harder, trying more, showing up even when they don't. But let me tell you something. They don't wake up when you're doing all the work. They wake up when you stop. When you take a step back and finally say, I'm done chasing someone who's not chasing me. That's when the whole game changes. Now let me break this down so you understand. An avoidant person is someone who, when things get too emotional, too close, too real, they retreat, they disappear. And if you're someone who loves hard, who values connection, who wants to talk things out, you'll find yourself in a one-sided dance. You're moving forward and they're stepping back. And the more you chase, the faster they run. Not because they don't care, but because they've learned to protect themselves from anything that feels like vulnerability. They confuse closeness with danger. And to them, space feels safer than love. But the moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop texting, are you okay? The moment you stop checking their last scene, stop writing paragraphs trying to fix what you didn't break, that's when something shifts in them. Your silence becomes louder than your words ever were. Your absence becomes something they can't ignore because now they don't know what you're thinking. They don't know if you're moving on. And for the first time, they got to sit with what they've done. And see, reflection is powerful. You can't make somebody reflect by yelling at them, crying to them, or trying to convince them. You make them reflect by stepping out of the equation. Let them sit in the quiet they created. Let them taste the loneliness they thought they wanted. When the constant flow of your energy stops, when your love, your patience, your check-ins, your comfort disappears, they notice. It might not be immediate. Avoidance are slow processes. But over time, that silence eats away at them. That peace you chose for yourself becomes a mirror for them. They start to realize, wait a minute, they haven't called. They're not checking in. They didn't react to my story. And that messes them up more than you think because the person who used to show up disappeared. The person who forgave everything went silent. And that silence is deafening. It forces them to go inward. It forces them to stop blaming you and start questioning themselves. Let me tell you what reflection really looks like for an avoidant. It ain't some grand epiphany all at once. It's little moments of, why did I push them away? It's seeing a memory pop up on their phone and realizing you're not there anymore. It's hearing a song you loved and feeling that knot in their chest. And all of that starts because you made one powerful move. You stopped chasing. Now, this ain't about playing games. This ain't about being petty. This is about reclaiming your peace. You can't heal in a relationship where you're always running after someone who keeps running away. At some point, you got to stop, not to punish them, but to protect you. And when you do that, you shift the dynamic. You start feeding their avoidance and you start feeding your own growth. That's when you become the one in control, not of them, but of your own emotional world. And if that person really cared, if deep down they had feelings they couldn't express, this is when they'll show it. maybe not with perfect words, maybe not right away, but when they see the silence, when they feel the loss, when they realize the person who always chased them has finally chosen themselves, that's when they start reflecting. And real reflection, that's the first step to a real apology. Not the kind where they say sorry just to get you back, but the kind where they truly understand what they lost because you finally stopped chasing what was never supposed to run. Silence and boundaries speak louder than arguments. That's a truth most people don't want to hear. See, we live in a world where people think the louder you yell, the more they'll understand. You think if you just raise your voice, pour out your pain, break it all down for them, they'll finally get it. But let me tell you something straight. Words can be ignored. Arguments can be dismissed. But silence gets remembered. Silence is powerful. And when you add boundaries to that silence, now you created something they can't just brush off, especially when you're dealing with somebody avoidant, someone who pulls away when things get too real, someone who shuts down when they should open up. Arguing with them is like yelling into a cave. You hear your own echo, but you don't get anything back. You bring up your hurt, your confusion, your needs, and they give you a shrug, a cold look, or worse, complete silence in return. It makes you feel like you're crazy, like maybe you're asking for too much, when really you were just asking for basic decency. And the more you push, the more they pull. The more you speak, the more they shut down. You can't win like that. But the moment you go quiet, the moment you stop trying to explain yourself, the moment you draw that line and say, I'm not doing this anymore, you shift the whole energy. And listen to me, it ain't about being cold or cruel. It's about being wise. Because here's what happens. Silence forces them to sit with what they did. It doesn't give them a target to blame. It doesn't give them an argument to twist. It just gives them themselves and the empty space where you used to be. And that right there is when the mind starts doing some real talking. See, boundaries don't just keep them out, they keep you in. They keep your peace, your sanity, your worth intact. A boundary says, I love you, but I love me more. A boundary says, I will no longer argue for the right to be treated right. Because when you keep explaining your pain to someone who refuses to hear it, you start damaging yourself. You start doubting what you know is true. And that's when you lose yourself, just trying to hold on to someone who already let go emotionally. But when you say no more, when you stop showing up to the battlefield, you win a different kind of war. You win peace. You win clarity. And here's the thing, when you do that, it hits them, not immediately. Avoidant people take time to process. But when the noise is gone and the drama disappears, the silence you leave behind starts echoing. Your boundary becomes the mirror they didn't want to face. They start replaying everything, your tears, your patience, your love, and how they took it all for granted. You don't need to slam doors. You don't need to throw plates. You don't need to send long messages that'll just be left unread. All you need is that strong silence, backed by a solid boundary. That's what they feel. That's what they remember. Because now you're not just quiet, you're unavailable. You're not just distant, you're done explaining. And that's when the guilt starts creeping in. And that's when they sit in their own thoughts and realize, hey, I messed up. They're really gone. That's the moment they begin to understand the weight of what they did. And it didn't come from your words. It came from your absence. It came from your power. Because silence, that's the sound of self-worth. And boundaries, that's the shape of self-respect. Together, they speak a language no argument ever could. And that's when they finally hear you, when you've already stopped talking. Pulling back, your energy forces them to recognize your worth. I don't care who you are or how tough you think they are. When someone who used to pour into you every day suddenly pulls all that energy back, you feel it. You notice it. You can't ignore it. See, we underestimate just how powerful our presence is until we take it away, especially when it's coming from a good heart, a heart that showed up, stayed consistent, loved deeply, and asked for nothing but effort in return. Let me break it down. You ever been around someone who gave you that steady kind of love? They always checked in. They remembered little things. They encouraged you when you were low, celebrated you when you were high. That kind of energy is rare. It's healing. It becomes part of your routine. And when it's gone, you feel that silence like a hole in your life. Now flip that around. That person was you. You were the consistent one. You were the one who remembered their favorite song, checked on them when they were off, forgave them before they even apologized, because your heart was just built like that. You didn't just love with words, you loved with time, effort, presence, support. And maybe they didn't see it. Or worse, they saw it and got comfortable. They thought you'd never leave. They thought your love was guaranteed. So they slacked, took shortcuts, started responding slower, started pulling back without ever explaining why. And you stayed. You tried harder. You kept giving, hoping they'd come back around. But let me tell you something. Real power don't come from chasing. It comes from knowing when to pull your energy back. Not in anger, not to manipulate, but to protect yourself, to remind yourself who you are. And the second you do that, something changes. The person who once ignored your effort starts wondering why it's not there anymore. The one who took your love for granted starts feeling that cold air around them. They don't get the good morning texts. They don't get the check-in calls. They don't get that steady stream of comfort and warmth. And it's confusing to them because they never thought you'd stop. See, pulling back your energy isn't about silence. It's about redirection. You start putting that energy back into yourself, into your healing, into your goals, into your own peace. And you stop carrying the weight of someone else's emotional immaturity. That's when they notice, that's when they reflect, because suddenly they ain't got you to lean on anymore. Suddenly they got to sit with what it means to lose a real one. It's crazy how people start valuing you the minute you stop making them your priority. They'll act like you changed, like you being cold, like you're playing games, but you ain't playing anything. You just finally saw the scoreboard. You realized you were the only one showing up and you walked off the field. And let me tell you, your absence will do what your presence couldn't. Your silence will do what your words never did. When you stop explaining, when you stop begging to be seen, when you stop giving energy to someone who only drains it, they finally get the chance to see what they had. And more often than not, that's when the apology starts forming, not just with words, but with changed behavior. Because now they know, now they feel what it's like to lose your energy, and it humbles them. But the beauty is, by the time they realize your worth, you've already started pouring back into yourself. You've already leveled up. You're not where they left you. You've grown. You've healed. You've built a new peace. one that doesn't depend on their attention. That's